Welcome to An Awful World, but not awful like you think.
This is the show where we discuss whether we would have discovered important advances in a world exclusively full of Haylies and Libbys. I'm Haylie.
And I'm Libby. And today we're talking about weapons. That seemed really upbeat for weapons, but that's okay.
All right.
Weapons are an interesting topic.
Yeah. You can use them for fun.
Totally.
And evil.
Yeah. It just depends on how you look at it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Weapons. Let's dive in to the history of weapons. So then we can talk about if we'll have weapons in an awful world. So it's no surprise that weapons are really old.
Hella old.
So old, hella old, as with everything else.
Everything.
Basically early humans, like, you know, we're talking like early humans, like 10,000 BC, using clubs, spears, and like any kind of tools they could make out of stone.
Mm-hmm.
But like kind of hard because, you know, you don't have any tools to make those tools.
Yeah.
So like.
So you're just like banging rocks together.
Right. Yeah.
And then
being like, I guess this will sharpen it.
Yeah.
And then maybe I could stab something with it. I don't know. But then there's like Bronze Age, Iron Age, all these like different, like as history goes on, like 3,300 to 1,200 BC was the Bronze Age. That's when we first started having metal weapons, which apparently is kind of impacted by fire, the discovery of fire, because then we can start like melting. Yes, exactly. Metals and making them into, we can essentially start being blacksmiths. Okay.
Yes.
We're making weapons with, you know, heavy metal and we're pounding it or whatever blacksmiths do. I don't know. I just know that Will Turner is a blacksmith. And if you want to check him out, you totally should. So by that time we have swords, daggers, axes, and then also bow and arrow was really common at the time, which I think is interesting because we're like, this is the Bronze Age and we're going to use all of these, you know, metal weapons. And then they're like, oh, and also a bow and arrow, which is like pretty rudimentary tool.
So old.
It is old.
Like, it's one of the first ones. It was like 15,000 years old.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny that they were just still using the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
It's because it's effective.
It is effective, yeah.
You know.
And honestly, like, I think the bow and arrow remained popular for a long time. Like, even if you think about, like, medieval times, I feel like that was totally, like, people had quivers of arrows and whatever.
Like Robin Hood.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly who I'm thinking of. The Fox version of Robin Hood.
100% what was in my mind.
Literally what I'm thinking, too. Just, like, not a people Robin Hood, but the Fox version
in particular.
Yes.
But you know, what's funny is even nowadays, like movies that are like set in the future when everything's gone to shit.
Yeah.
They're all still using bow and arrow.
Yeah. I mean, Hunger Games.
Yes.
Classic.
100%.
Classic, you know, dystopian futuristic society.
Yes.
And she's using a bow and arrow.
So.
I think do they have guns in the Hunger Games? I can't remember.
No.
I feel like they had to because it is supposed to be futuristic. It's like after the United States has collapsed into 12 different districts.
Closer than you think.
Yeah. Check out the season finale of the United States coming in the next 100 years. Anyway. So then after that, the Iron Age happens. Again, similar thing. We're doing, we're doing swords and spears and then like shields as well, because iron is a stronger metal than bronze is. So we're able to make much more like heavy duty weapons. But then also like armor, like, you know, think of like classic like knight armor. That's all being made out of iron, I think.
Some sort of metal.
Yeah. And then they got like chainmail and all this stuff, you know.
Which is just fascinating.
I know. And so fucking heavy though.
Yeah.
So now we're just like, sorry. Like if you get shot, you get shot. Like we can give you a vest, but
I know. Why don't we make like coats?
I don't think you'd be able to move very well.
Well, I mean, you could have like little Velcros or like strappies like right at the elbows.
And you're gonna you're going to stop bullets like that? Just,
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I think the thinking obviously is.
Yeah, it's to keep just your like vital organs.
Right. Yes. And
whatever.
They wear helmets too, so that like, you know, hopefully you're not shot in the head. But anyway, that's pretty dark. But then like, you know, more modern weapons come around between like the 1300s and the 1800s. Particularly, the Chinese invented gunpowder.
Yes, the like earliest description of it is by them in 1040.
Yeah, they invented it. And at first they were just using it for like fireworks, which I support. They were like, this is cool. We can make like pretty explosions with this.
And then, of course, the human brain is like,
or
you know what we could do?
We could kill
weapons.
People. Yeah. So I was really like, what is gunpowder? How did they discover this? Mm-hmm. What's going on? So gunpowder is a combination of potassium nitrate, charcoal, and sulfur. And they cause that chemical reaction, which creates a blast. The Chinese actually discovered it on accident, which I think is really funny because they were searching for some sort of elixir that would make them immortal.
Oh.
And when they mixed these things, it went boom, boom. And they were like, oh.
They were like, oh, so not that.
Right. They're like, that was really pretty, though. What if we do that on purpose in the sky?
It'll be
colors.
Fun.
Yeah,
Ooh.
It'll be fun. But then, of course, as you said, the people brains are like, or hear me out. We could kill people with it.
Yes.
We could shape warfare with it.
The opposite of an immortal elixir.
Yes.
Actually.
Truly.
They're like, oh, you want to live forever? What if we actually cut your life short right
We're
here?
going to blow you up right now. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? It's a little bit too ironic. I mean, yeah, I really do think. So I thought that was so funny, though, because I was like, that would happen. Like, I think that would happen in an awful world where we're just like, what if we mix this with this? And then it's just, and you're just like, okay.
100%. Because how many times am I like, yeah, we'll come up with that because we'll be playing potions.
Playing potions, exactly. I don't know where they acquired these things, the sulfur and the potassium nitrate and
I assume the ground.
But I mean, I guess they were just like, what's this? And then just added it to a pot. Yeah. What's this?
Because, you know, forever, I just think that like human beings are always just playing potions.
Yeah, they're just like, what would happen?
Witches.
Except I just feel like they're so much more brave than me. Because if I mix some things together and it literally blew up in my face,
I would be like, oh, don't do that again.
Never doing that again. Where some people are like, we can harness this power. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't test this.
You're like, actually keep them really far away from each other.
This is not God's will. I can't. This is scary. Like, so those people are much more brave than me. So, you know, guns come around kind of a little bit later than that. We have gunpowder, of course, which we're using to have cannons and like large like metal projectiles thrown at people, or you know, making some sort of other explosive devices. But we don't get guns until farther down the road, and that obviously changes the face of warfare like completely. I wanted to talk about too that I think this is so fascinating because when we think about guns today, which obviously is you talk about weapons in 2025. You're talking about guns almost always.
Always. You're not like, oh, clubs and and unless you're talking to me, you're not thinking the guillotine.
Yeah. Nobody is showing up to a gunfight with a club. Yeah. Like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Like, well, not if I shoot you first.
Right.
So I thought it was so interesting because Brian and I went to Washington, D.C. last year to visit a friend. And we went to Baltimore as well, where we went to Fort McHenry, which is where Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner.
And then, you know, you had a thought, and then you caused the bridge to collapse.
Which I took a picture of the bridge missing a large piece from Fort McHenry. And I was like, I'm so sorry, everyone. This is just awful. But they were doing a live weapons demonstration while we were there that day. About what it would have been like when this battle was occurring, which was before, I think it was before, no, it must have been after we became a nation. It doesn't really matter. sometime in the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the guy was like, even the most like skilled, weapon handler, it would take them a full minute, 60 seconds to reload their gun.
Oh, 100%.
Like pour the gunpowder in there, put the little thing down there to pack it in, do all this stuff. Like it was very intense.
Yes.
And it's just crazy how different it is today that you have a weapon that literally can fire in rapid succession. Like I just don't think our founding fathers ever considered that would be a possibility.
No.
When we wrote the Second Amendment.
This is always the argument, is that the people who are like Second Amendment fanatics are like, we have the right to bear arms. Our forefathers said so. And I'm like, yes, but you also have to take into consideration intent and what it meant to bear arms to them
in their context
versus what it means now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but in literally no world could they have ever thought you could shoot 50 bullets in 30 seconds.
Right.
Like there's just no way. Like they don't think that. They're still like, oh my God, a light bulb?
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's just not, it was unfathomable to them that we would ever have something like that.
To them, indoor plumbing is unfathomable, let alone an automatic weapon.
Firearms like that.
Like, also, have you ever seen that? I think it's Family Guy, where it's like right to bear arms, but it's like bear arms.
Yes. That's
and
funny.
I'm always like, you know what? You don't know. That could have been the intent. You're like using your claws.
Gotcha.
I'm sure those those would be effective as well.
Absolutely. I mean, if it's going to take in those times someone a full minute to reload their weapon, my bear claws are going to come in clutch.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just something that's so interesting to me that, when you like watch them, and they were using like genuine weapons from, the time, that we could have never fathomed. I would love to know what the founding fathers would think today about those types of weapons, and whether or not they would really want to include something that could kill, a dozen people in 5 seconds.
They would be so shocked.
Yeah, I think they would be too.
They would shit their pants.
Yeah.
They would be like, this is not cool.
Because it's like warfare was just really different back then, right?
Oh, yes.
Like there was a lot of mutual respect, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to describe it, but I just don't feel like we have that anymore, because you don't have to think very long and hard before you hurt somebody with a weapon.
Well, I always think about, so in college, I took a U.S. history class, and it was actually really fascinating. And they were talking about how it was either World War I or World War II when the first like chemical warfare actually became a thing. And going from, like people are like, yes, guns are a thing. But even then in the First and Second World Wars, like that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Guns were still much slower than they are today.
Yep.
So, they're like, yes, people are going to die and people are going to come home missing limbs, whatever. We'll take care of them. But then all of a sudden, chemical warfare became a thing. And people came home like missing half of their face, but still being alive. And how do you deal with that? Like that guy doesn't have a nose anymore because of the chemicals that were sprayed on him, and these kind of things. And so like the world came together, and it must have been the First World War, because I think the second one, they like the UN was like, no, you can't do that. Actually. Yeah. And everyone was like, fair.
I think it was the First World War too, as well. Also, you know what I meant? Because like, so early on in, the 20th century, we start having mass production, specifically with vehicles. Yes. Like Henry Ford, we get the production line, that whole thing, right? But we also start mass producing guns. And so that's like super impactful. But yes, I also wrote down about chemical weapons becoming a thing at that time as well. And this is what I wanted to talk about in the taxes episode. I sort of alluded to sometimes you have to do a bad thing to do a good thing type situation. The whole time I was researching this topic, I just kept thinking about J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Yes.
Because
I wrote that down too.
Wow. What people have argued over this topic since it happened. The atomic bomb and coming up with that as a weapon, and then actually not only coming up with it and threatening to use it, but actually using it twice, just within the span of, a day or whatever. So I just think your psyche is so harmed, I think, by building things that are this harmful to people. And certainly his was. Like, I don't think that he was a bad person. I think he was a scientist who was tasked with creating something to protect our nation when we really thought that the Germans were way ahead of us, and they were going to drop one on us before we got the opportunity to even come up with how to do this.
Yeah. And sometimes it really is like especially Germany was a smaller country, and like all the places that they had considered dropping these are like much smaller areas than like the States.
Right.
And so it's kind of like how many people are there versus how many people are here. And do we kill this many people to save 10 times more people?
Right.
Kind of a thing. And the human mind, and especially in war, it's always us versus them.
Yes, it is. And like it's what you have to do to survive type of thing, right? So I always just think the conversation about the atomic bomb is so interesting because I get it to some extent. I truly understand that we were kind of in a rock and a hard place. We had been attacked by Japan, and we were scared that Germany was going to come up with that, and they were going to kill us all, kill our entire nation. So I certainly understand, why we had to do it. I still don't like it.
No.
I think that the Japanese at the time were already losing. They were already kind of down for the count. And what really bothers me is that we used it on civilians.
Yes.
So, but I just thought that was interesting. And something else I wrote down too is about the Winchester Mansion. Are you familiar with the Winchester Mansion? Okay, so there's a gun manufacturer, Winchester. They make rifles mostly, and they made rifles back in the 1800s. Well, I think it was like in the late 1800s, the widow of the man who started the Winchester Rifle Company, she started building this house. It's known now as the Winchester Mystery House because she never stopped construction on it until she died. But she would just like make these staircases that lead to nowhere and all this really weird shit in this house. And the theory is that she was so haunted by all the people that their weapons had been used to kill that she was like tortured by them in this house, basically, which I just think is such a fascinating. But like, there's so many like of those psychological implications when it comes 100%. To warfare and weapons, but especially chemical weapons, because you think about Agent Orange in Vietnam.
I was just going to say.
I mean, obviously it hurt the Vietnamese people that it was used on, but it also hurt a lot of people from the United States that were sent there to fight.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know what that does to your psyche, but it doesn't seem good.
No, it's definitely not good. Well, and think about like going back to past weapons and the weapon I talk about the most, the guillotine.
I was like, where are we going with this? The gun? A guillotine. You have brought that up a time or two.
But think about like the weapons prior to the guillotine, like we've talked about the bow and arrow and all of these things and muskets and that kind of stuff. Those are all weapons that like are obviously made to harm. Most obviously weapons are, but you can survive them, but still be in like massive, massive pain.
Yeah.
And so like when you think of the guillotine, it seems so rudimentary, and it was used into the like
70s.
Yes, I was going to say
the
like
1970s.
Yes.
To be clear.
Yes. So like it has still been used like very recently.
Right.
But that is a weapon that they were like, we want to kill people, but we want to do it as humanely as possible.
Yes.
Because they're like, one, quick, clean cut. You're dead. You don't feel it.
Right.
It's so clean.
Yeah.
That like there's no actual physical pain associated with it.
It's not torturing you.
Yes.
It's not drawn and quartered or, burned alive.
Yes. Or stoned.
Any of the other ways. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like funny how there are so many weapons out there. And it's like we kind of go back and forth that, we want to harm people or we want to kill people or something like that. And it doesn't really matter. We're just trying to like harm and maim.
Yeah.
And then eventually they come up with a weapon such as the guillotine where they're like, we want to do this fast and humanely to end somebody's life.
Here's how we're going to handle this.
And then we go like into further guns. And I feel like with like automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, we get to that point where it's like, we want to end a life and we want to do it quickly and more humanely. But I'm also like, it's not.
No.
And even with the guillotine, like, it's not humane because they have to sit there and wait. Like, it's mental torture.
Yeah.
Because you have tied them up, put their head there, and they're watching this happen to themselves, where at least like with a gun, you could do it behind their back without them knowing it, just like pow.
Right.
But also there are so many children in our country today who are shot and have to just like live with that for the rest of their life because they're gonna live through it,
like maimed. Yes.
Physically. And I feel like with chemical warfare there was a lot of we'll kill people silently and fast.
Yes.
But then they didn't really expect people to live.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely true.
So, and it's like with gas chambers, I think that they were, in the Holocaust, they were like, it'll be fast and quick and painless. But also, you've put 1,000 people into a room that is supposed to hold 100, and then you left them there questioning what's going on, and they're all dirty and naked and confused, and you say that they're getting a shower, and then they're choking to death on this chemical.
Yeah.
So, again, even though what you think you're doing is humane, it's not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, too. I think that so many things... sometimes they just happen on accident.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like there was something we were talking about, some topic that we've done an episode on, I can't think of right now, that we were like, these people really started out with the best of intentions.
Plastics.
Yes, it was plastics. They started out with the best of intentions. I think early humans created weapons particularly to stay alive so that they could kill animals.
Yes, they needed to hunt.
Right.
And to just protect themselves.
Right. Yes, exactly. From other people. It wasn't necessarily we're going to go out and like intentionally use this against people. But if someone's trying to come at us and hurt us, then I'm going to, defend us type of thing. Right. So they start out with the best intentions. And I think that that can be said for a lot of things. Like, it just falls into the hands of the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
And then those people use it for evil instead of good. Mm-hmm. And then, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We should definitely do a death penalty episode because...
we definitely should, which I know we talked about in prisons episode. But
yeah, but maybe we could talk about it in more...
in more depth.
Yeah,
yes.
Because we didn't really talk about the history of the death penalty or anything like that in other countries and stuff. And I think that would be fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But... yeah, part of me just really wonders, like, in an awful world, are we going to have weapons? Yes, I think
so too. But I think they'll be very rudimentary.
I agree, and I just don't think that it will ever. I just don't think warfare is necessarily going to be a thing in an awful world.
No, because something we've talked about a lot is being a matriarchal society, and women are more likely to
be passive killers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not even just killers, but be passive in general.
Yeah.
To where we would be like, okay, well, if you don't want to do this, then we will withhold resources from you.
Right.
Like, or we're going to talk bad about you behind your back.
Fine, China, you don't have to work with us. But I am so not speaking to you.
Exactly. Then we're going to go to Japan and be like, no, like, I really love her, but like,
she's kind of a problem. Like, no, and totally. I just...
Exactly. I think that's more how we would be.
Yes. It's not like, you know what? You fucked with us and now we're going to make you pay.
Exactly.
With lives.
Like, we're not going to murder people.
Right.
What is that about? I think a lot of things would come about weapons would be more like fun games. Like think of like lawn darts, how people were like, oh, they're so fun. And then people kept ending up in the hospital and they're like, turns out you can use this as a weapon.
Right. Lawn darts. That's funny.
But like, I think we could have a bow and arrow and we would be like, archery, what a fun game. Yes. We've set up targets and all of this. And like,
what am I practicing to hit? Nothing.
It's just a fun game.
Yeah, it's just a hobby. It's fun.
Then it turns into like regular darts in a bar, and then it turns into lawn darts, and then we're like, wow, this is kind of dangerous.
I honestly too, like, I agree that I think they'd be very rudimentary weapons because guns are strange.
They are strange. I don't get it.
So basically what happens is you got your gun and there's a bullet in the chamber, right?
Right.
And when you pull the trigger, a little pin fires and it hits the center of the bullet.
Right. And then there's gunpowder there, which makes it go pew.
Yes. And it just builds up so much pressure that it shoots the bullet out.
Yes.
What?
I get it, but I don't.
I mean, how are we going to come up with that?
No.
I don't. How did we come up with that? I have no idea.
And I just don't get how we get such fast guns now. Like, is that if I'm holding the trigger, but it's going like, is that little thing
pin
just like
firing over and over?
Like, what's happening in there?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because I know that
it must be
like everything's like a little magazine, and then there's just like a billion things in there, and it's just like blah, 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 blah. But I'm just holding a little.
You're thinking like a machine gun.
Yeah. But I'm also just like, I don't know. Don't
ask me.
You know?
I don't know a ton about guns, I'll be honest.
I don't either. All I know is like we have one tiny little handgun in the house, and I like to not know where it is.
Yeah, I think that's a good
plan. Especially just like with my mental state, but it's so tiny. And sometimes I like to hold it if I do see it. And I'm just like, pew, pew, pew. And then I'm like, and now I will set this down. And I have to put it back.
Well, I mean, obviously have fired guns and stuff before because my, a lot of members of my family are very into firearms, which is fine. Whatever.
It's fine.
I think it's important, like, to know gun safety skills.
100%.
If you're going to have a gun in your home.
Yes.
So, like, I know how to, load and unload a gun. Mm-hmm. I know how to check if there's a bullet in the chamber. I know or that you're not supposed to point it at somebody, even if it's an empty gun with an empty clip. Like, no, you don't point a gun at somebody unless your intention is to hurt them.
Exactly.
So I think that stuff is very important, of course. But like, are we going to come up with guns? No,
that's just not even a little bit.
No, and I said that I feel confident that we would come up with gunpowder on accident.
Yes,
but I don't think we would figure out
playing potions
how to harness it into little bullets, and then so like maybe as far as we get are like projectiles.
Yeah.
Or like, IEDs.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
100%.
And that's as crazy as it's getting. And are we really going to be using them against people?
No.
I don't think so.
Here's the thing is I don't think that we are having wars.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we're murdering people like on a big scale like that.
Yeah.
I could see us murdering like somebody who's really just like driving us crazy. And is like just a really bad person in our current in our individual lives.
Yeah.
But like again, I could see us doing it more passively. I think poison. Would be really the way to go.
Yeah.
Or, in heat of passion kind of murder using whatever is nearby to just bash someone in the head.
Yeah.
Kind of a situation. I think that we would have daggers and knives.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can use them as weapons, but also just as tools.
As tools. Yeah, they're useful tools.
And also because they're cool.
Yeah.
They're just shiny.
Yeah, absolutely. With the metal. Yeah.
But I also, again, as we've mentioned before, there is a long lost episode where we talk about iron and we talk about blacksmithing kind of in general.
Yeah.
And while I believe that we could be blacksmiths, I know you were a little hesitant on it.
Yeah.
But B, I don't think our blacksmithing skills are going to be so good that we could make a gun.
No.
You know?
I thought you were going to say like a sword, and I was like, you're underestimating us.
No, like I think we could make like a sword. I think we could make like a gate.
Yeah.
A bed frame.
Yeah.
These are things I think we could make.
But no, a gun? No.
That seems too hard.
I don't know how they make them now. I don't
either.
I would have
just
to
kind
watch.
of assume that it's like, well, now I feel like they're all like plastic. But
I mean
like they're like half plastic, half metal.
I think they have like plastic like pieces
on the
them.
outside is what I'm saying.
Yes, but the whole like, thing itself is actually metal.
Yeah, but I feel like it's like metal that's been like punched out by a machine, and then they're like putting plastic coatings on like pieces on like the outside on the hands and hand parts and stuff. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know how it all works.
I don't know. But I don't know. I just don't think that we're really getting that far.
No, I don't think we are either. Absolutely not.
But then I also kind of wanted to talk about something that you haven't seen. So it makes it harder to talk about, which is the last James Bond film.
Mm-hmm. I haven't. I need to do that.
No Time to Die. And I'm sure my husband's shooting daggers at you right now because you haven't seen it. But in it, there is like another type of weapon that like doesn't really exist right now, which is like a DNA coded kind of chemical weapon.
Okay.
And it's kind of just like a lot of James Bond stuff. Like we went to the Science and Industry Museum in Chicago last year, and they talked about how a lot of weapons in the movies and a lot of just like tech in the movies was unheard of at the time and actually like we have now. Yeah. Because people were like, oh, that's so cool. And then it was actually made into real things from these things. And I'm like, God, I hope that that's not like what's going to happen with this movie, is that people will use that as inspiration to come up with this kind of chemical warfare and stuff. But also in it, he has this like poison garden, the like main villain does. And then he like everything in the garden can be like used to murder people.
Jeez.
And I'm like, that feels like a weapon that like we would have. We would be like, these are our poison gardens. Right. And then these are our like flower gardens.
But we're not like, harming people on like a mass scale.
No.
Which I think is why we don't care about getting to the point of, needing a weapon like that.
Right. Like, we would be like, this is our poison garden. And this would be like a poison for your husband who beats the shit out of you. And here would be a poison to just like stop someone from being so aggressive. Yeah. Or like, here's a poison to just like give someone diarrhea because they're being such an ass.
Very passive. It is. Exactly. It's like, well, you could just tell them you have a problem with them. No. I'd rather give them horrible diarrhea.
100%. So sometimes people deserve it. That's all I'm saying.
You're not wrong.
There are quite a few people that I think we should be poisoning just to give them horrible diarrhea for a weekend.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong on that.
Just saying there are certain people in the government now who I think deserve it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say who. I'm just saying. Yeah, people in general.
You're just saying.
Wink.
That there are people here in the government. Anyway, so yeah, I think I agree. Rudimentary, not having guns. I do wonder though, like, does warfare ever become a thing in an awful world? I don't know. I'm kind of in my mind, I'm going back and forth.
I just like don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Because it feels like
it's usually over land.
Yes. I think it, normally it is. It's over land, which I don't think we would have a problem with.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think we're overpopulating because people were like, oh, we need 12 kids because A, half of them won't survive the winter. Right. And B, we need the other ones to be our slave labor. Yeah. And I don't think we're doing that. But then also, I don't think we want to birth 12 kids. No. I think we would be like, oh, whoa, buddy, that's a lot. Too many.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to have a problem with like, hey, maybe we could just like, you have that land and I have this land and it's fine. But I also don't really see in a world full of Haylies and Libbies that I am upset enough about something that like someone over there is doing that I have to like get my whole community to risk their lives
to murder another community of people
and to bully them out of doing what they're doing like because really what if you sit down and think about it, warfare is just like bullying. It's country bullying.
It's petty for sure. But it's also just like it's interesting because it's been going on for the longest time, since the dawn of time.
And I don't understand that. And again, I think it's just like humans have like a very us versus them mentality. But then there's also stuff that like, I think as people continue to evolve, I mean, not here, but in other places are becoming less aggressive over time. And then there's like stuff that makes people aggressive, like lead. And so people who have lead poisoning are more aggressive, which is why people think that boomers are fucking crazy. They probably all have lead poisoning, and that's why they're such aggressive human beings. And so I think that, you know, as we learn, hey, maybe don't put lead in stuff. And then maybe we calm down a little. And maybe if we all chatted a second, we would learn that maybe we're closer than you think. And maybe
we can solve problems without killing each other.
And so you don't have to kill people because they're gay or
That's
black.
good, because I don't want to kill people.
I know. I don't want to kill people at all. I don't want to kill animals. And
I know. I don't either, but like to survive.
But how would you know?
I refer back to the meat episode.
That's true. There's the whole fish eyes thing. But
that's true. Yeah.
You know.
It's true. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that, you know, I have no survival skills. I don't want to survive. Every day I'm like, let's wrap this up.
I think you have probably more like survival instincts than you think you do. I think that's just like wired in our DNA of just like, if something such as X were to happen, it's like how, you know, like the classic, if the woman lifts a car to save her child type thing. I just feel like that, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that
comes
like,
into play.
If someone were to come at me to like murder me over something, I think it would depend over like what it was for, you know, like on the principle of it.
Right.
You know, I could stand up and be like, don't murder me.
Yeah.
But on other things, I would be like, you know, it's not worth it. Just murder me.
Yeah.
Because like I said the other day, that I'm always Judge Turpin from Sweeney Todd. Kill me, boy. Well, here I stand.
And I'm like,
do it, murder me.
No.
Ty's like, great. You're inviting people to just come to our home and murder us.
You're like, not us,
just me. I already said you have a gun and that I don't know where it is.
And there's a good reason for that. Oh my gosh. Well,
so
you have anything else to say about weapons?
I think I'm good. You?
I think so too. Yeah. I think that, that was a pretty like comprehensive, fast overview of weapons and whether or not we would really use them like that in an awful world. I think that just sort of remains to be seen, but we'd have them probably, but not guns. So just give up on that now. Sorry.
You Second Amendment fiends. Yeah. You know,
so sorry, but
there is no right to bear arms. Unless they're bear arms.
Well, and even that's going to require you to murder an animal.
That's true.
So
the Haylies wouldn't have that because the Libbies might be like, oh, here's a dead bear. Let me have their arms. And the Haylies would be like, oh, what's wrong with you?
I don't know. I'm just playing with them. Well, thanks for tuning in today, peoples of the Awful Podcast family. If you would like to help us keep the podcast going, definitely check us out at patreon.com/anawfulworldpodcast. Give us a like and a follow on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. You can listen to our episodes on YouTube, anywhere else you get your podcasts. Well, we look forward to chatting with you next time. But until then, we hope your day is simply awful.